In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Have you ever noticed how through Scripture, heaven and earth are so frequently held within the same breath? Conjoined twins at birth, I like to say sometimes. Heaven and earth. This is something that the season of resurrection continues to remind me of. That the veil is thin between these places. We are so quick to name heaven as this distant realm, only accessible through divine teleportation or maybe the occasional chariot of fire, if you're lucky. But what if it's much, much closer to us than we imagine? What if all those times that we prayed, your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven, God's kingdom of heaven actually did advance further toward earth? What if all this is a great participatory coming together? Jesus certainly made it sound that way, didn't he? And, Paul and John certainly added to a lot of that, and so did the ancient prophets. Today we're celebrating Earth Day, if you're listening to this on quote-unquote launch day. But I can't help but wonder if we can't celebrate Earth without also celebrating heaven. Or if we can't celebrate heaven without also celebrating earth. Both are God's creation, the body and the spirit. Which brings me back to resurrection, the ultimate world-changing moment when Jesus returns from the dead in a resurrected body. Jesus shows up and he's wearing heaven and earth. Are you with me? He has a body, but he is appearing and disappearing. He is eating fish, but somehow beyond that need. He is wounded, yet ascending. Whew. I might preach if I don't stop, friends. Happy Earth Day, friends. I hope that all this gets you more curious about our place within this creation as God's people, and grateful to be a part of this magnificent and mysterious story of being made from the ground, yet breathed into by divine breath. Yes, yes, yes. Earthbound Christian, check it out, friends. I dig into so much of that. But today, y'all, this may be one of my favorite conversations with biological oceanographer Jenni Brandon. And you're about to find out why. Okay, friends, today I'm with Jenni Brandon. She is an oceanographer, science communicator, and science and sustainability consultant. She has a PhD in biological oceanography from Scripps Institution of Oceanography and has been working on climate change and sustainability for over a decade. Through her academic research on microplastic pollution and her work on climate change, she has become passionate about teaching the world that their daily choices have lasting impacts. Jenni has become one of the most preeminent scholars in the field of microplastic pollution. She has not only developed lab and field research experience, but has also given hundreds of talks, lectures, and interviews on the emerging dangers of microplastics and the importance of limiting plastic in our own lives. You've been featured, it looks like, in BBC, CBS Newsweek, which is really cool. So many others. So yeah, welcome, Jenni. It's such an honor to share this space with you.
Thank you. I know. I always say it's not like me that the reason I've been in BBC and all those things, it's really that everyone cares about microplastics. I'm just like very
Just
lucky
own
that I
it.
studied something that the public cares about.
Yeah, it is wild. Yeah, considering all that. No, that's so cool. Yeah, and of course, I want to dig into some of your research, but maybe before we get into that, I'd love for people to hear a bit more of your story, and specifically your quote unquote ocean love story journey
Yeah.
and how that began.
Yeah. So I grew up in California. I grew up loving the ocean. We were always a family that took vacations to the beach and like always went snorkeling. I always joke with my parents. I'm like, if we had been like a camping family, would I have ended up like doing my PhD studying trees? I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, but I grew up really that kid who like always wanted to be swimming, always wanted to be in the ocean, and I was always like a total tree hugger. Like I
Mm.
started a recycling club in kindergarten. Like I always loved this stuff, but I didn't really know it was a career. Like I didn't know you could like love recycling and eating organic and that stuff as a career until I was in college. And so I went to college actually pre-med. I was like, oh, I love science, so I should be a doctor. And it really wasn't until I was in college that I really realized what it looked like to be an academic scientist and what that career really was. And I was a sophomore in college and kind of had this like full identity crisis of like my whole life people had told me, "Oh, you're so smart, you should be a doctor, like this is your path." And then I was like, "This isn't the path I think God's actually taking me on. I think God's taking me on this path to study pollution and try to like take care of creation and take care of the environment that we've polluted so much." And then I ended up on a total spur of the moment signing up to spend a semester at this place called the Duke Marine Lab. And it was the most amazing semester of my life. And that's when I really was like, oh, I can study the ocean for a living. Like this can be my job. And yeah, that's when I
Yes.
decided to dedicate my life to protecting the ocean.
Ah, that's so good. I love that, and I love that. That's sort of a spark of the imagination there because I do often think that there's just a mental roadblock of like, well, what could I do? I guess I could teach, or I could be, And it's like there's so many things, and actually. So I work part time with Trevecca Urban Farm, and we try to help these kids think about we work with local youth and high schoolers and middle schoolers, and we try to help these kids think about like, oh, there are a myriad of conservation careers
Hmm.
that you can engage in, and so yeah, that's really great. So it seems you've had lots of hats, or you wear lots of hats in the science community, but maybe that is the title close to your heart, the biological oceanographer.
Yeah, it's such a great question because I have worn a lot of hats in my career. Um, so yeah, I went to do my PhD in biological oceanography, and I really thought I was going to be like a traditional professor, have a lab, spend my career in the lab and staring at a microscope. And I realized very early on that wasn't really what I wanted to do. It's a very introverted career, which no one really tells you, but like you
Hmm.
spend a lot of time alone, staring at a microscope, staring at data. Um, you do a lot of your experiments you do for like 2 to 3 to 4 years, and then you publish the results. And I am not an introvert. I'm an extrovert. I love people. And so for me, I did this microplastics work. I would publish these results and they would get like a lot of media attention. And I would be asked to give all these lectures and talk about them and do all these interviews because people really cared about the results, as they should. Microplastics are dangerous, and we'll get to that. But then people would like want me to talk about them and come talk to companies and things, and my professors were like, no, you should actually go back to the lab, like there's more research to be done. And I was like, but these results are so important, like we actually need to go influence policy or do these interviews. And they're like, that's someone else's job. That's actually
Mm-hmm.
like the nonprofit's job or the science communicator's job or the policymaker's job. The scientist's job is just to analyze the data.
Hmm.
And so I started to realize really early on that I was like, oh, I actually don't think I want to be a pure academic and like just analyze the data and hope someone does something with it. Like, hope someone's communicating that science correctly, or like, hope someone gives a lecture on my work properly. I was like, I want to be the person doing that.
Hmm.
Um, and I hope I hope that I can do that for my friends and my colleagues' data too. So I've really kind of taken this very roundabout path where I now spend a lot more time interpreting and communicating and applying science than actually doing pure science in the lab.
Yeah, that I feel that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel that. Yeah, there's so much, and it's so needed because there's so much. They say that the famous quote is that we know more about the surface of the moon than we do the ocean, right? Which,
Hmm.
it's funny after this whole Artemis 2 mission, that's probably even more true, right? We've got
Hmm.
these high def photographs of the moon now, which is crazy. And anyway, I remember. So there's this one picture of the Earth that they took from the mission that I've seen being passed around. That's really mind-boggling because it was just a photo of our planet and from the spacecraft, but the entire circular frame of the Earth was just water.
Yeah.
And the
Yes.
caption was like, wait, is this our planet?
Yeah.
And it's so wild. And actually just last night we were watching the new Lilo and Stitch movie with our kids, like you do. And if you know the movie, there's this beginning part where Stitch is being like exiled and he's escaped his captors and they see, oh, he's headed for a water planet, that'll do him in. And then they zoom in and then there's the tiny island of Hawaii there. But anyway, total side thing.
Yeah.
But
No, I mean, the planet is 71% water. Like it's so much water. And I used to do a lot of research out there in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, as we call it, and we would sail from San Diego to Hawaii, and it takes so long to get there. Like you're
wow,
just,
you sailed from there.
mm-hmm.
That's so
Yeah.
wild.
And when you're in the middle, quote unquote, of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, you are days from land in any direction. Like you feel so alone. And what's really trippy about it is you're so alone. It's just water everywhere the eye can see, and then you just see like our trash float by. You just see like a Coke bottle float by, and you're like, oh yeah, this is not supposed to be here. Like nothing's supposed to be here but water. But yeah,
Mm.
that images that they took from Artemis is incredible because you're like, this is how big the Pacific really is. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. Wow. That's so. First of all, I'm so jealous. I want to sail from San Diego to the. Like, I know
It's
nothing about sailing,
incredible.
but I want to do it. But that's really cool. I wonder. So so my first book is called Garbage Theology, and I think in my first chapter I talk about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and but I just can't imagine. I can't imagine like being like in it like that. What was that experience like? I mean, physically.
Um, it's so surreal actually being out there because one, you like never quite know where you when you get to it, because it moves, it's amorphous, but then you do like you see a bleach bottle float by or like a huge net float by or a tire float by and you just feel so like guilty, like why is this here? How did this get here? Also, I felt so convicted. I was like, okay, this is why I do this work. But the crazy part for me is, we would pull those big nets out, we would pull the tires out, and then we would like let the water settle. And then that's when we would see just like thousands upon thousands of microplastics like float to the surface. Like you don't see them at first because they're mixed in the wake and they're mixed in the
Mm.
currents. And then you see them come up and it's literally like the water is like covered in confetti. Like they are everywhere. Um, and so then that was just a very surreal feeling of like, oh, this is going to be so hard to ever figure out how to clean up all these tiny pieces. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
it is a very daunting feeling when you're out there. But it's also so beautiful. I mean, being out in the middle of the ocean is so beautiful. You feel so small and the world feels so big. Um, yeah, it's one of my favorite
Yeah.
places to be is out on a research boat.
Yeah. Wow. That's just totally wild. Yeah, there's so many. I have so many questions. Yeah, there are. So, okay, I'm gonna ask. Let me just start with like sitting in the back here. People in the back row, right?
Yeah.
How does all this trash get in the ocean? Like,
Oh, yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like, and I
Yeah.
think that's some of the shroud of like, well, I live in Tennessee. I don't think I'm contributing to that. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like that's just,
Yes.
and you're just sort of thinking through like, who are these people leaving bags and straws on the beach and this sort of thing. But that's not necessarily how it works, right?
Yeah, that's not really how it works. So the vast majority of trash that's in the ocean is coming from land. It's coming from mismanaged waste, is what we call it. So it'll come from dirty beaches, but from dirty rivers, from dirty harbors. A surprising amount of it comes as like trash or goods are moved from like boats. And so that will be sometimes that is trash from Tennessee that's being moved to some of that trash gets processed overseas. So, like here in California, for a long time, we did not actually do most of our recycling in California. We would do the first processing here, and then we would put it on boats and we would ship it all the way to Asia to process it. And
Crazy.
then you bring back that recycled plastic or recycled aluminum and then turn it into something back here or turn it into something in Asia and bring back the recycled goods. In that process, not only are you shipping it across the entire ocean, but sometimes you're losing it in that process. Um, and then, yeah, somewhere like that's on the Mississippi River, you can, if you pollute way upstream, every river in the world eventually ends up downstream at an ocean. So we lose a lot of it that way. Um, the biggest polluters, quote unquote, are Southeast Asia. All their beaches, a lot of those countries don't even have waste infrastructure, but they're making a lot of our goods. You know, you turn over anything and it says made in China, made in Indonesia, made in Vietnam. So it's like it's our overconsumption that is causing the problem. And then a very small percentage, probably like 10, 15% of the trash is actually coming from fishing, and aquaculture and things like that that are actually happening in the ocean and are just never making it out of the ocean. And
Hmm.
some of that is avoidable, some of that isn't avoidable. Like if you have a huge storm, you're going to lose your fishing nets, and there's nothing really we can ever do about that. We're always going to lose some of that stuff in the ocean. But most of it we can actually avoid and we can actually clean up by better waste infrastructure, better recycling, things like that.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it seems you've done, obviously a lot of research at this point on the microplastics that, largely, we say these plastics are forever, and what that really means is that they deteriorate and become brittle and break apart and smaller and smaller, and of course, are infiltrating, these very oceanic waters that we
Yeah.
depend on. I'm curious if you'd share some of that research with us into microplastics and what that is really meaning for us as humans right now, and
Yeah.
and how bad is it, and is it even possible to retrieve any of that?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So I was like early in the world of microplastics, which seems crazy now because when I started working on it, people were like, are small plastics even part of the problem? And now I think we all know that they're kind of the majority of the problem and what most people are worried about. And when I started my PhD in 2012, like we didn't even know they were in the human body. That's how fast this has happened, that now we're like, this is the main concern is human health, the effects of it in our food, all those things. But yeah, let me back up. What are microplastics? Microplastics come from two sources. The first one, we call them secondary microplastics. They come from a big piece of plastic that breaks down into small plastic. So you leave a plastic water bottle out in the sun, it will eventually break down into tiny little pieces, little fragments. And we find a ton of those in the ocean. You've all probably someday in your life like seen brittle plastic that yellows, that breaks. Um, those things become microplastic. The second one is what we call primary microplastics. And so they're actually made small already. And so those are things like plastic microbeads that are like in our cosmetics, in our toothpaste, in our hand sanitizer, like those little beads. Those are plastic. And we're finding more and more of those in things we didn't even know they were in. We're like, oh, that's like the grit in some of our like cleaning products. Those are like in
Oh,
paint. They're
wow.
everywhere. And so there's a lot of legislation being passed to kind of try to take those out of things. But the one that really has kind of gotten a lot of attention and in our research and in our policy are microfibers. And so those are what we call a secondary microplastic because they come from cloth, they come from fabric or rope or anything, and they are literally these microfibers that wear out. So when you think about your clothes over time, wearing out and getting thin. It's literally like pieces of the fabric coming out as these little microfibers, and they come out in your washing machine or your dryer. They go out through the washing machine, they get to the wastewater treatment plant, and they're like too small to get filtered out in our with our current technology. And so they like wash right into your local river, lake, ocean, wherever your water goes. And so we are finding more and more of them. My research, I really looked at how small can plastics get and realized we had been undercounting the smallest plastics out in the ocean by maybe a
Hmm.
million fold. Like we just didn't
Wow.
know how small they could get. And now we're finding more and more even smaller than that. And we're starting to find them in our food, in our soil, in our air, in our bodies.
Yeah.
Um,
Because
and then
we're
I
talking
also,
about at this point, oh, I'm sorry.
no, no, continue, continue.
No, we're talking about at this point something that you can only see with a microscope. Like this is molecular level.
Yeah, yeah. So they are small. Yes, we're looking at things that are sometimes like the width of a human hair or smaller. Like these things are small.
Mm.
Um, and the smallest ones that we call even nanoplastics, some of them can like get through your blood vessels. They can like get into cells. They're so small, but they're still plastic. And so the reason when we say plastic is forever, plastic is made out of oil, it's made out of fossil fuels. And so it doesn't break down the same way that when you leave, like, an orange peel out, it's going to compost back into the soil. Plastic isn't made out of something like quote unquote natural. So it's not going to break down the same way. It's just going to keep getting smaller and smaller, but it's never
Hmm.
really going to break down. And so it just keeps getting physically getting smaller, but not chemically ever like composting away.
Right. Yeah, I feel like I saw maybe in another a snippet of another interview that you did where you mentioned or at least dialogued around how in the future they're going to look back and find plastic the way that we look back and find fossil fuel now.
Yeah. So I did this study where I looked at a sediment core at the bottom of the ocean. And so we can do this. I mean, you can do this anywhere, basically looking at soil, but there's certain parts of the ocean where you can literally look at like tr at individual layers in the soil and you can count them like years, literally like looking at tree rings. So I live in Southern California. You can do this off Santa Barbara where literally there's no oxygen there in the soil. And so the sediment just falls layer by layer, year by year, and there's nothing living there because there's no oxygen. So nothing like stirs up the soil. It just falls perfectly. And so I looked at this sediment core over the last 150 years, which is important because plastic's only been around for like 75 years. It basically became popular after World War II. And I saw this like exponential increase in plastic that goes basically perfectly mimics the exponential increase in us using plastic. We basically have this same exponential increase of us leaving it behind in our sediment record. And so, yeah, we're going to be able to look at plastic left behind in our sediment record the same way that like archaeologists look for bronze from the Bronze Age or iron from the Iron Age. Like we are going to be remembered, at least partially, as like the plastic age,
Hmm.
which is terrifying when you think about it, like that's going to be one of our legacies.
Yeah, this is part of the sauce that I'm continually stirring. I think of the understory happening here, which is how we are as humans and obviously as all of creation being reshaped,
Hmm.
even by our own quote unquote technologies. And to say, I know there was, I think it was like a 2017 study maybe that was like, you probably got a credit card's worth of plastic in your body, and it sounds like that's probably maybe not accurate data, at that time, or maybe it was, but that was 10 years ago, and just thinking about, and I know you've talked some about the marks of the Anthropocene,
Yeah.
is that humanity and the earth is literally being remade into something that it
Hmm.
was not before,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. there's a whole group of scientists that study the Anthropocene in general as like this whole new archaeological age that we are living in. And it's very terrifying and very fascinating. People put different ages of like when the Anthropocene starts. Some people put it as like it starts at the Industrial Revolution when we create like steam, and some people put it at like later than that, like the steam engine, all these different things. A lot of people put it at after World War II when we kind of have like mass increase in globalization and factories and all these things. If you put it then at kind of 1945, 1950, and kind of like the baby boom and mass globalization and all this stuff, the number of things that change that have this like incredible exponential curve, they call it the great acceleration of the Anthropocene.
Mm.
It's really wild. It's like the number of trees we've cut down, the number of like the number of chickens we've started to domesticate, like mass poultry, like all these things that are going to be left behind in our fossil record of like, oh, we are drastically changing this beautiful planet like so fast in one generation, or I guess in two generations. Like my grandparents were alive before then,
Hmm.
And you're like, it's changed so fast. And plastic is going to be one of those things left behind because it lasts forever. Whereas some of these other things, chicken bones and things may decompose, but you're like, wow, if you look it up, if you look up the great acceleration of the Anthropocene, it all changes so fast. And one of the things that's very clearly on that line is carbon dioxide from more cars, more plane flights, more
Hmm.
factories, all those things. And so, yeah, it's scary. It's scary how fast we're changing it. And
Right.
what does that mean? What does that mean for, you know, this beautiful planet that
Yeah.
God left us?
Mm. So many things there. So many things there. So, yeah. So going back, sorry, real quick, I kind of
Yeah.
jumped ahead, but going back to, talking about microplastics before we kind of move on. And I know this is the thing that everyone like wants to know and talks to you about. Like, what are the findings now of how our bodies are being altered or harmed, or is it just we just don't know yet? And
Yeah.
then kind of a part two of that question that I'm just curious about how or if at all your thoughts on plastics have changed over time, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Um, ugh, how is it affecting us is actually a
Mm-hmm.
harder question to answer than you would expect. So we are finding it in a lot of parts of the human body. So we found it in the brain, in blood, in our lungs. So we're breathing it in. It's just like out in the air, which is crazy. It's actually a good proportion of dust is now plastic, which it did not used to be. And it's often actually there's more plastic inside your home than outside your home there. And so we're finding it in our blood-brain barrier, which means it can literally transfer into your brain. We're finding it in our guts, which is terrifying. So we're like eating it in food. And then the really scary results that got a lot of people's attention is that we're starting to find it in like placentas and breast milk and sperm. And so it's affecting unborn babies. And so
Mm.
you're literally being born already in a plastic world. And what does that mean? And how does that affect people? But what people always ask me is like, okay, how does it affect people? It's actually like really hard to do a study on this because for two reasons. One, there's no control group. Everyone's already contaminated. So you can't like say like, well, this group has no plastic and this group has plastic because like we're all already breathing it in. And then the
Mm.
second is this like complicated ethics question of how you actually do biomedical studies is I can't say like, hey, Caleb, can you eat like a milligram of plastic a day and we'll see what it does to you? Like, you're not allowed legally to do those kind of studies. And so we know it's causing harm, but we have to do a lot of these like correlation versus causation studies to figure out exactly how it's causing harm. And
Right.
The way we talk about it as microplastic scientists is like we are in the same era of when it took so long to prove that cigarette smoke was bad for you or to prove
Mm,
asbestos was bad for you. It's like everyone knows it's bad for you, but we're trying to figure out like exactly what the smoking gun is to prove like what thing is really from secondhand smoke versus what isn't.
hmm.
But there's an amazing movie that just came out on Netflix called The Plastic Detox. And it is with this brilliant scientist named Dr. Shanna Swan. And she looks less at plastics and more at the chemicals that are in plastic. And so the chemicals that are attached to microplastics, like phthalates and forever chemicals and these things, are not only in plastic, they're in some other parts of our lives too. They're in like fragrances and disinfectants and things. But she um, works with some people in this movie that are having infertility problems and helps them like totally detox their lives from some of these chemicals
Wow.
and show how it really changes the levels of like BPA and PFAS and things in their lives. And what's really interesting about the movie is really showing like how common and prevalent these chemicals are and like how hard it is to really detox your life from plastic. It's everywhere. It's
Yeah.
literally everywhere.
And that's kind of what I was thinking with, well, kind of first before we move on, but
Yeah.
you were saying it's like it's everywhere. So how do you study it? And meanwhile, we're, as you're saying with the Anthropocene, there's so many other things that have rapidly changed in the last 75 years as well. So it's like it could be a million, a hundred other things that's causing
Yeah.
X, Y, Z. And so, and how do you differentiate which of these crazy changes to our ecosystems is causing this? And maybe it's all of the above. And so, yeah, I can totally see
Yeah.
that.
It's really hard. We always are like, we always wished there was like one chemical that was only used in plastic that we could like use as a tracer. But even BPA, and people think about
Mm-hmm.
BPA free plastic, we use BPA in other things. And so even if we find like really high levels of BPA, we can't definitively prove that came from plastic. You are exposed to it on other things. You're exposed to it every time you touch a receipt at the cash register. It's
Right.
coated in BPA. So we live in a plastic age, but we also really live in a chemical age. And so it's really hard for us to do some of this causation research, but I will say none of the research looks good. Like no, nothing's saying like, oh, plastic's good for you. Like it's making us live longer.
Right. Yeah. I don't think anyone's raising their hand and saying, I'm okay with plastic, my body being full of plastic.
Yeah, no one's like,
It's,
oh, great, you found plastic in my blood. That's good. Yeah, no one's
yeah,
excited
that's
about it.
probably fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, kind of back to that question of like, so I'm curious for your own personal life, what has that meant for you, or like, do you eat seafood, or like maybe what are if you could name like a handful of like these are the things that I avoid or X Y Z.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah. So I never drink out of plastic water bottles. It sounds so cliche, but it is really like one of your highest exposures is plastic water bottles. Um, I have a ridiculously expensive water filter at my house. But there is plastic water in your tap also.
Hmm.
And so I like bit the bullet and bought this like nice water filter that takes out a lot of those chemicals
Oh
like
wow.
PFAS, which are forever chemicals, and lead and things like that. But it also
Yeah.
is certified to take out microplastics.
Oh wow. What
Um,
can you share what it's called, or do you
yeah, it's
remember?
called Rora, so RORRA, and it's amazing. It's like all stainless steel. It sits on my counter. And it makes the water taste a lot better too. You're like, oh, you could actually taste some of these like
Hmm.
chemicals that were making the water hard. I never microwave plastic. That is one of the things we've really found makes a big difference is like the microwave actually like sucks some of the chemicals into the food. And then, yeah, do I eat seafood? That is a question I get all the time. I do eat fish, which surprises people. I do not eat shellfish anymore. So I don't eat like oysters or mussels or clams. And that is because, like an oyster, it sits on the bottom, it can't move. So anything that falls on the ground, it is going to eat, and it is designed like God designed it to be the filter feeder of the ocean. It's like an air filter of the ocean.
Mm.
And then you eat the whole thing. You eat its stomach too. And we've just found like really high microplastic loads in oysters.
Wow.
So I don't eat them, but I do eat other fish, and there's no microplastic warning on fish. Where there's sometimes like a mercury warning on certain tuna from certain places. We're not at the point where there's like a warning on a lot of those things yet. So yeah, enjoy your
Yeah,
sushi. It's
yeah, yeah.
fine.
Yeah, right on. Good to know. Good to know. Yeah, I think there's so many things like that that I similarly try to avoid. And, I even think about like flossing
Yeah.
my teeth. You're literally taking plastic and rubbing it around your mouth and all these little things. We're holding our cell phones with this plastic case and everything,
Yeah.
and you don't necessarily think about it. And a lot of these things I do feel like, perfection is the enemy of maybe good, and try to mitigate where you can, climb aboard where you're able. But then there's other times when you're like, really, I gotta, like, you're thinking about all my synthetic clothing or
Hmm.
something like that. You're like, that's just, you're like, man, I feel defeated already.
Yeah.
Thinking about all these little things. And so I think the temptation with so many other, similar to so many other things with creation care, is don't feel defeated, right? But just kind of like, on board where you can,
Yes.
because it's the ocean we're swimming
Yeah.
in, and which is so many of these things with, this age that we're living
Yeah.
in.
I love that you said that. I tell people that all the time, that perfection is the enemy of the good. And I compare it a lot to New Year's resolutions, that I'm like, if you try to do it all at once, those people that are like set like 15 New Year's resolutions and have quit by like January 5th, because it's like you can't do it all at once. But if you set it just like
Mm,
one goal at a time to use less plastic, it's much easier. And so I'm like, as soon as you're just used to always carrying a reusable water bottle everywhere, then move to always remembering a reusable coffee cup at the coffee shop, then move to your next thing. But like if you try to get rid of all plastic in your life at once, like you will fail. It's overwhelming because it's everywhere. Um, so I tell people to try to do it like one room at a time. Um, but then also just know like it's really hard. It's everywhere. And it's not all going to work for you. Like there's bamboo toothbrushes and like plastic-free toothpaste pods. I tried to use like so many of
mm-hmm.
those little toothpaste tabs, and it turns out I was like allergic to most of them. And I like went back to normal
Oh, wow.
toothpaste. I was like, okay, well, this isn't, I tried like three different brands, and I was like, this is actually more wasteful. I can't use these things. And so I
Yeah.
use like normal toothpaste now that doesn't have microbeads in it. It's Tom's of Maine, like pretty natural, but I'm like, this
Yeah.
isn't,
And you can recycle
yeah.
those
And you can
tubes,
recycle the
actually.
tubes, and they give part of their profits away to the environment. But I was like, this isn't, I can't do this. I can't go fully
Right.
plastic free because it's actually giving me like canker sores. So I was like, it's not worth it.
This is gonna sound crazy, but I found these toothbrushes that I actually really like. But the bristles are boar's hair,
Oh.
and they actually work really well, and they're pretty affordable. So,
Oh,
anyway,
that's so
side thing.
interesting. Okay, I'll look at that. But yeah, there's certain things that are like, I think everyone should do. Like, I think everyone should get rid of their Keurig coffee pot. Like those things, those little pods are so
Mm.
much plastic, and you are boiling hot water straight through plastic. I'm like,
Oh my
don't
word.
do it. There's so many
Yeah.
ways to make
Yeah.
coffee, so many ways to make coffee that are metal and glass and not doing that. But then there's some things where I'm like, don't kill yourself to like try to get rid of every single piece of synthetic fabric you have in your house. Like, also, some of those things become more wasteful. Like, if you get rid of your whole wardrobe and buy a whole new wardrobe, you're then just adding to the like clothing waste problem we have.
Totally.
Yeah.
Right. Which is huge. It's a whole nother. Yeah. Absolutely. Real quick, so there are a number of, and it's fine if you don't know, but I know a number of, companies out there, or a handful at least, that are doing kind of ocean cleanup and that sort of thing, and thinking about, this stuff on the back end. Do you have any that you're like, this is one to support?
Oh, that's a great question. There's a lot out there, yeah, that I think are doing good work. Let's see, which ones have I loved over the years? Some of them make like cute stuff, like United by Blue
Yeah.
sells like great organic clothes, and then they take a pound of trash out of a local waterway for everything they sell. Four Ocean does similar. Um, and then there's great nonprofits out there. Like my favorite nonprofits I've worked with are Ocean Conservancy, Surfrider, Plastic Pollution Coalition, Five Gyres. Those are kind of the four big ones.
Oh, wow.
They all
Okay.
do great work. Surfrider does like a lot of local campaigns. So if you want to get involved in like ban styrofoam takeout containers in your town, they're probably the ones doing that.
Oh,
Or
wow.
ban like helium balloon releases on the beach in your town or whatever. Like Surfrider are probably the people doing that. And then Ocean Conservancy does this really cool thing every year. They do this like thing we call the International Coastal Cleanup, where one day a year around the world, they do a beach cleanup, or if you don't live near a beach, they clean a river or a lake or something near you. But then they categorize every single piece of trash that was cleaned up. And so then as scientists, we get all that data and we can see every piece of trash that was cleaned up and see the top 10 pieces of trash that were cleaned up. And we can see like, oh, in this area, the plastic bag ban is really working because plastic bags were the number one piece of trash cleaned up, and now they're like the number five. There's less bags, like, and all this kind of data um, is available to us. So it's really cool. So if you want to ever get involved, the International Coastal Cleanup is every September.
Okay, really cool. There's more there than I thought. Maybe I was just writing. I was like, maybe we should try to get like a little comprehensive, maybe not comprehensive, but a little list going there in the show notes because that could be really
Yeah.
cool. That's really great. Well, I know we got to wrap up soon, but I love if you're willing to share a little bit about how your faith has been a part of this journey for you over time and has helped or not helped shape this work around not just your research, but your whole story there.
Yeah. For me, like my faith and my journey as a scientist go hand in hand. Like I know a lot of people think they should be at odds or can be at odds, but for me, it's very much one and the same. I think the more I learn about the ocean and the more I learn about the environment, the more I'm just kind of like in awe of God as a creator. Like he's so creative. And if you stay, this sounds so nerdy, but like if you stare at plankton under a microscope, you're just like, there's no reason for this stuff to be so beautiful. Like no one can even see it. And it's just so beautiful and so
Mm.
intricate and so gorgeous. And it's like, you'll look at plankton under a microscope and see all these details. And then you'll look at the stars of the sky and see all these details. And you're like, God was just like, just going crazy when he created the universe. It's so
I love
gorgeous.
that. Yeah.
Um, but then yeah, for
Hmm.
me, I just really feel like my job has always been to help kind of try to fix what we've broken. We have broken a lot of creation, and I see pollution and climate change and plastics, all this stuff as like a sin issue. Honestly, it's like overconsumption, it's like greed, it's all of those things. Like so much of plastic we don't need. Like we need some of it, absolutely. You walk into a hospital and you're like, oh yeah, plastic is saving lives, like it's sanitary, all those things. But you walk into like a fast food restaurant and you're like, we really don't need most of this. Like this is so wasteful. And so I just spend a lot of my time thinking like my job is to try to make creation more beautiful again. And that's really kind of an honor.
Wow. I love that. We're riding the same wave here. I love that. That's so good. Yeah, and the plankton. Oh man, I love learning about stuff like that. And the whole thing reminds you. It reminds us of, oh, this is actually not about me. Like
Yeah.
creation doesn't revolve around us.
Yeah.
And for every quote unquote beautiful plankton we discover, there's 1,000 more undiscovered,
Hmm.
because it's ultimately not about our glory, but about God's glory. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I really appreciate that.
Yeah. My pastor said something last week during his Easter sermon where he was talking about this like study that came out that was saying like the number one, I'm like gonna totally butcher this, but basically like the number one emotion we can like we like feel with like the most euphoria kind of is awe. It's like it's not joy, it's not love, it's not any of those things, but it's like when you feel awe, it actually like calms your nervous system the most. And it's like that's why people love getting out in nature. That's why they love sitting by the ocean. That's why they love seeing a sunset. I think it's why so many people loved last week seeing these new pictures of the moon is it was like the awe of literally seeing nature and like when we see a new species, when we find a new species, when we realized last week that the moon has colors on it, like what? Are you kidding me? Who knew that? It really is kind of there's something that happens to the human body that's just incredible that you're like, oh my gosh, we are so lucky to be here.
Oh man, absolutely. And I feel like that's some of the things that I feel like we keep circling back to and so much now after so much data has been out there for so long around everything that's going on environmentally, climate change, all this stuff, and none of these things seem to spur much change at all, save awe and wonder.
Yeah.
Right, when people are able to really engage in creation in that way, like this is what we're hardwired to sort of connect with. Right, not the data, not the graphs. Even conversations like this can seem like it just kind of sits in one part of our brain if we don't then sort of turn the page into awe and wonder and like sit in creation and that kind of space. But I saw I guess last thing here, I saw that you maybe a number of years ago you're involved in a creation care kids curriculum.
Oh
Is that
yeah.
right? Maybe could you share a bit about that?
Yeah. So there's a company called Minnow that does amazing kids TV and curriculum and Sunday school stuff. And they were part of the new Young David movie that just came out. They do like great work. But they asked me if I could do this creation care curriculum for them. And it's really aimed at kind of the parent level of like parents talking to their kids about creation care. Um, but it was so fun to do to really dive into some of those scriptures about like, okay, well, like what does the scripture really say like about water or about like plants and soil and like diving into some of it and being like, I know in my heart, like I believe in all this stuff, but then like really saying like, oh my gosh, like the scripture is so rich with imagery of creation and creation care and um like Adam was a gardener like he like this is like it's deep
Mm.
in there, it's in our roots to love nature, and so it was really really fun to write, and it's yeah I sometimes forget about it, it was so long ago, and then every once in a while one of my friends who's like a young parent will be like, I just downloaded this and it says you wrote it, and I was like, oh
That's cool. Yeah. Well, I thought, I feel like there's such a gap in resources for youth around creation care. And so
yeah.
anytime I find something like that, I feel like that's just like, that's huge. So,
There really,
yeah, really
yeah,
cool.
there really is. It feels like people are still a little nervous to talk about creation care sometimes. Like there's still sometimes a feeling of like, do you believe in this? I don't know. Like, can we say the word climate change? Can we talk about it? And it's like, I actually think a lot of the social science data shows that like more Christians believe in this than don't.
Hmm.
But yeah, we still are a little nervous to talk about it. So we need more curriculum out there. We need more resources out there.
Yeah, and I think that we're still building the muscle memory
Mhm.
as Christians for this kind of work. And I take for granted, people like you and I, like we're in this work, and sometimes I'll say the term creation care and people just kind of stop me or give me that like glazed look, like they have no idea what I'm talking about. And I'm just like, oh yeah, I use this term all the time, but maybe this means absolutely nothing for them. And so, which is just kind of where we're at in history right now, where I do feel like God's really calling out so many Christians to put language to this, to speak to this, to connect with this, because creation is groaning, and there's so much that we need to be up to as the people of God here. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
yeah, well, thank you for your time, Jenni. This is This has been really good. I've got other things here we didn't even get close to, but I was like, we'll save it.
This was wonderful. It was so great to meet you. Thank you for having me. And yeah, we can always do this again and talk more.
Friends, there's just so much there. There's just so much there. But alas, our time is drawing nigh. Today, if you're in the States, I'm offering a bit of an action item invitation for you to engage, quote unquote, politically. If you've noticed, which you probably have, that the EPA has been rolling back, friends, as in getting rid of some significant protections for God's creation and the environment. And it is serious. And so the Evangelical Environmental Network has made it super easy to engage here. And I'm linking their Take Action tool on this below. It will pull up a sample letter for you that can connect you directly to the right people. And in a few clicks, you're taking action, friend. So jump in, get your feet wet, build those muscles, and we'll see you next time, friends.